I'm a WPI graduate from the class of 2019. I got my degree in robotics engineering. During my time on campus, I was a member of the Student Alumni Society, SAS, and Rho Beta Epsilon, the Robotics Engineering Honor Society. I'd be lying if I said that I didn't need at least a couple of stress-relieving hobbies to get me through college, one of which was crochet, which I learned when I was in 5th grade. So today I'm here to share a few crocheting basics with you. Anyone who knows me knows that my favorite events on campus are the ones that involve parades, so it was a pretty big deal last spring when I got to be in the Alumni Weekend Parade bearing the Class of 2019 banner. So today's project is modeled after the Alumni Weekend banners. You can decorate yours however you like, but if you're an alumnus that's feeling like you're missing Alumni Weekend this year, you can make your own mini banner to have your own mini parade.
So let's jump right into this crash course in crochet with Karina. To start with, what is crochet? Or more specifically, what is the difference between knitting and crochet? Both are yarn crafts, but knitting is done with 2 long straight needles and works up row by row. As such, it can sometimes be considered faster. Crochet is done with 1 hook, like this, and it works up stitch by stitch, making it slightly more versatile for round shapes. An easy way to remember is that knitting has long straight needles, like the 2 T's in the word, whereas crochet is done with a hook, like the letter C at the beginning. So, for this project, you will need some yarn and an appropriately sized crochet hook. Most hooks are labeled with their size on the flat part, that's the thumb grip, and most of the time yarn will have a recommended needle size for both knitting and crocheting. So this particular yarn recommends a letter I. The yarn I'll be using, which no longer has its paper, I'll be using this H hook. You'll also need scissors and a tapestry needle or embroidery needle, pretty much any needle with an eye big enough to fit yarn. Optional will be any sort of decorations, including felt, paint, ribbons, rhinestones, whatever you feel like, a hot glue gun to adhere your decorations, and another optional would be a cat to get in the way. Most of my projects are done with at least some feline intervention. So let's get started. We'll be making what's called a chain of 21 stitches. So find the end of your yarn, grab your hook, make a loop in the yarn, like so, reach through the loop, grab that tail of yarn, pull it through, and then make sure to hold both of these ends and pull the yarn till you have a little knot. The reason it's called a slip knot is because if you were to take this hook out, all you have to do is pull the ends and the knot slips away. So one more time, over the top, reach through the loop, grab the tail, hold both of them tight, and pull the hook out to make it nice and tight. Now comes the chaining part. So one chain involves wrapping the yarn around the needle and pulling it through. That's one chain. Let's do it again. Around the needle and through the hole. 2. Around and through. 3. Around, through. 4. So we're going to keep going until we have 21 of these. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and last one, 21. So together, these 20 chains plus the 1 will form the base of your project. As you can see in this diagram here, it's actually the 20 that will be the base, and then this last one is actually kind of a bridge to get you up to the next row. The next row will be made up of what we call single crochet stitches. So you're going to go back and put a single crochet in each of the chains that you've already made, barring that first one, that's the bridge. So let's take a close-up look here. We're going to skip this first chain right here. This one doesn't count, and go into this second one. So stick your hook through the top loop. See how there's kind of two loops right here. Camera focus. Wrap the yarn around the hook. Pull it through. Wrap around again. And pull through both of those loops. So that's one single crochet. The yarn coming over my finger, by the way, is the yarn from the big ball over here on the side. Hold the yarn however feels most comfortable to you. So now we're going to do it again in the second chain into the top loop of the chain, wrap around, pull it through, slide your hook up, grab the yarn again, pull through again. That's 2 single crochets. Now we're going to go through and do the same thing for all 20 chains. Down, around, down through, around, through 2. Down, around, pull through, around, through 2. Down, around, pull through, around again, through 2. As you can see, it's kind of starting to take shape. So this bottom will be the bottom edge of your project, and then all the future stitches will be done into that same looped pattern as you have in the chain. That same pattern is on top of your working piece. So pull a little more yarn here. And let's continue single crochets all the way through. Down, around, pull through, around, through 2, down, around, pull through, around, through 2, down, around, pull through, around, through 2. You can hold this however you feel most comfortable, but most of the time it's easy, especially when working directly into a chain, to keep your thumb firmly on the chain that you're going to be going into next. So let's keep going till we get to the end of the row. You can see it's starting to curl on this end, but that will go away the more stitches we put into it, the more structure we give to our working piece. So getting up to the end of the row here, whoopsie daisy. Pulling through. You can kind of hold that down in your hand if you want, if it helps to keep it out of the way. And here we are getting to the end of our chain. And so here we go. Second to last, around, pull through, around, through 2. And this is the very last one. This is actually the slip stitch that we did at the beginning of our chain. So put the yarn through. You should only have one piece of yarn on top of the hook, and then on the other side there's 2 pieces of yarn. It's hard to see in this video, but once you try it, I'm sure you'll be able to see. Around and through 2. So that's it. That is 1 row of single crochets. The rest of this project will be comprised of 15 of these rows, not including the chains. So you've got your 20 chains at the bottom, and then row by row of single crochet until we reach 15. So I'll show you how to end this row. Basically, just flip it over, and then from the back, do the same thing, except this time, because you have something that's a little more solid than just the chain, you're actually going to go through these the 2 pieces of yarn on the top rather than just the one. So now you'll have 2 pieces of yarn on the inside of your hook. You pull the yarn under both of them, around, pull through again, and there, that's 1 single crochet. Back underneath again, through 2 on the next stitch, focus camera, pull through, and 2. So that's 2 single crochets on top of your last row of 2 single crochets. 3, tuck underneath these 2 pieces of yarn, around, back, around. And if you make a mistake, I probably should have mentioned this earlier on, but all you have to do is pull out your hook, gently tug to get rid of that one stitch, and then catch the end of the last chain, or the end of the last stitch on your hook again, and you can resume like nothing ever happened. So through, around, back, you've got your stitch back, and you've gotten rid of whatever mistake you may have made. So we're just going to keep going just like this until we get to the end of the row, and in the end you're going to turn it over and then start crocheting your way back. So it just zigzags back and forth as you go up through your project. So I've skipped ahead and finished this row almost all the way to the end. I just wanted to give you guys one more chance to see how I get to the end of the row, turn around, and resume the next row. So 3 last single crochet stitches on here that we need to do. I tuck the yarn under the first one, under the 2 threads, around, pull through, around, and pull through both of them. 1 and 2. Second stitch. And then this end one, sometimes this can get a little tricky because this stitch will get pulled down onto, tightly onto the point where you turned around at the end of the last row. So you got to take a really close look at it and make sure you pick out exactly which 2 pieces of yarn you're going to be pulling through. So there's one, you can kind of nudge it with your finger if you need. You got the one, and then the one next to it. Second one. Now you've got the 2 strands on your hook, in addition to the loop from before. Pull through, and around, and pull through both. So now we're at the end of a row again. We're going to flip it. It's easy to remember, you just flip it like you would flip the pages of a book. And then from the back, tuck under those 2 loops of the stitch you just made, pull through, and start crocheting your way back along your row again. So for the purposes of time, I've made, get rid of that now, I've got one that's almost already at the end. So like I said, it's going to be 15 rows long. Let's count them out. This little bump at the bottom is your chains, so we'll start counting right, whoops, above it. 1, 2, whoops, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And here we are up at the top. So this is how I did earlier, like at any point you can just pull your hook out, and as long as you have this loop, you can pick it up and keep going. Here we are up at the top. Last few stitches. And it's obviously not required that you stop after 15 rows. Theoretically, you could just keep going infinitely and make a very long scarf that is not very wide. But the thing about crochet is you can make it pretty much any width you want, any length you want. It's really mathematical, which checks out for someone who graduated from WPI. So, getting to the end of the row here, got 3 more stitches left. 2 more. And the very last one. Pull through, or push your hook through underneath 1, underneath 2, wrap around, pull through for your last stitch. There you are right at the end. Grab your scissors and cut the yarn, leaving a couple inches tail because we're going to need to weave it in at the end. Snip. So now grab your hook, and just as though we were going to do a chain, wrap it over once, pull through, and then give it a tug. And that's your rectangle. And you're done with your hook for now. So next up, we're going to weave in the ends. This is where the tapestry needle comes in handy, or embroidery needle. or even a yarn needle if you don't mind it being rather thick. So pull that end through, and then we're just going to find a way to weave in this loose end through at least a couple stitches so that it doesn't come loose. For this project, the little homecoming banner doesn't matter super much, but if you were making, say, a sweater, you wouldn't want a whole bunch of loose ends to come out of your project. So here I've just woven through the insides of some of the stitches, pull through. You could continue to weave in a bunch more, but like I said, the tightness or keeping the ends tight isn't a super big problem. Snip close to your work, but not so close that you cut your stitches, and there you go, it's woven in. Do the same for the chain, or for the loose tail at the beginning, from where you started your chains. Find a way to weave it in. If you have any sewing experience, it might come in handy. Do some little in-out action here from just a simple running stitch. If not, that's totally fine too. Pull through. Yarn has a little more friction to it than most of your basic sewing with fabric, so account for that, but it's not so bad. Snip. Get rid of those ends. And you have a crocheted rectangle. Now from here, you can decorate however you'd like. I've got a wooden dowel and some yarn scraps to tie to create something like this one, but if you want, you can sew onto it with some additional yarn, make a loop of a different color yarn at the top, cut out some pieces of felt, glue them on. I use hot glue. Or if you're not feeling decorative at all, you can just stick some pins in it and have a nice place to display them. If you don't have space, that you're not afraid you won't lose your pins. This one has a ribbon on the top. I've just woven it through the back, tied a loop on the top, and there it is. So for this particular one, I've taken the liberty of cutting out some felt pieces ahead of time. We've got a little gompy. Make sure his head is straight, legs, and behind. So line that up however you'd like. I'm going to do his sweater first so that we can make sure it's centered. Always advise caution in the case of hot glue guns. I like to say that's not a lesson I had to learn the hard way, but it 100% was. And there we go. And his little front hoof. Usually with felt on yarn, you don't need too much glue. You don't have to glop it on there because actually felt on yarn is pretty grippy friction-wise on its own. But a little bit of glue never hurt anything. Got a hoof and a tail. Pat down gently. And his head. And there you have it. Now let's find a way to adhere these to the top. 1 minute. You can grab your hook again and use it to pull this yarn through. You just stick it through random spot, use it to pull through that strip of yarn. And then the nice thing about the crochet stitches being so even is you can count the same number over from the other side, so you attach your mounting spots evenly. So that's about, what, 6 stitches? 1, 2, 3, 6-ish, give or take. Pull those yarn scraps through and use that to tie on this little alumni weekend banner-esque dowel. That's how they hold up the banners during alumni weekend for the parade. Like I said earlier, you can mount this however you want. If you want to put it on a piece of ribbon, if you want to put more yarn, use some embroidery floss, or even just leave it flat and make a coaster. Whatever makes you happy. So we'll tie some little bows. Whoopsie. Trim down the ends once you're happy with however your knotting has come out. And you can have your very own Alumni Weekend Parade. So this will be that one. We've got this one. The nice thing about crochet is you can do pretty much whatever you want with it. So maybe once you've got the hang of the basic stitches, you can go on and learn some of the more complicated ones. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have fun crocheting your own mini banners for your own little parade of goats.